Did you know that some of the most epic love stories from the medieval era, roughly 1100 to 1500 AD, kicked off with someone being stolen? What if your grand romance began with a forced journey you never asked for? Get ready to explore tales where destiny was literally dragged away. Number 11. King Horn. The world of medieval romances often feels like a whirlwind of knights, dragons, and ladies in distress, but sometimes the distress isn't just a dragon guarding a tower. Sometimes it's a full-blown invasion that rips apart a young prince's entire life, tossing him into the uncertain tides of fate. This is precisely how the Middle English romance known as King Horn kicks off, setting the stage for a sprawling adventure of love, loss, and eventual triumph. This tale, which scholars suggest dates back to the early 13th century, is one of the oldest surviving Middle English romances. It's preserved in significant manuscripts like the Cambridge University Library MSN's Bodley, Library's Laud, Miffy 108. It introduces readers to Horn, the handsome and promising young prince of Sudden, a kingdom on the sea. Horn lives a life of privilege and learning, surrounded by his loyal companions, with a future bright and clear before him. He is destined for greatness, but destiny takes a sharp, brutal turn, not with a gentle nudge, but with a violent shove. One day, out of the blue, a fleet of Saracens, or foreign invaders, arrives on the shores of Sudden. These are not friendly visitors. They are ruthless warriors intent on conquest and destruction. They swiftly overrun the kingdom, killing Horn's father, King Murray, and brutally slaughtering his mother, Queen Godhild, along with many of their people. The young Prince Horn, along with 12 of his most loyal companions, is captured. But the invaders don't want to keep these boys as slaves. They want to eliminate any potential threat to their new rule. So, what do they do with the young prince and his friends? They don't execute them outright, which might seem merciful, but their solution is arguably more terrifying for those involved. They gather the 13 boys, load them onto a rudderless boat, and cast them adrift on the vast, unforgiving ocean. This isn't just exile. It's a deliberate act of abduction and abandonment, a forcible removal from their home, their heritage, and their future. They are literally stolen from their known world and left to the mercy of the waves, with no food, no water, and no control over their direction. Imagine the terror of being a young boy, watching your kingdom burn, your parents killed, and then being pushed out to sea with no hope of return. This traumatic event is the true start of Horn's romantic journey, even though love isn't immediately on the horizon. The forced displacement, the being taken against his will, is the catalyst. It strips him of his identity as a prince and forces him to rebuild himself from scratch in a foreign land. The boat drifts for days, eventually washing ashore in a land called Westernesse. There, Horn and his companions are discovered by King Aylmar, who takes pity on them. Horn, with his noble bearing and quick wit, quickly becomes a favorite of the king and his steward. He learns the customs of the land, excels in hunting and knightly skills, and begins to grow into the heroic figure he is meant to be. It is in Westernesse that Horn's path crosses with Princess Rimenhild, King Aylmar's daughter. Rimenhild is captivated by Horn's beauty, his strength, and his sorrowful eyes. She falls deeply in love with him and eventually decores her feelings, initiating the core romance of the story. Their love is passionate and true, but it is constantly threatened by external forces, including jealous rivals and, of course, the lingering threat of his lost kingdom. The initial act of abduction, the brutal forced removal from Sudden, is what places Horn in Westernesse, what shapes his character, and what ultimately brings him into Rimenhild's orbit. Without that violent beginning, their love story would never have unfolded. He would have remained a prince in Sudden, and Rhimenhild would have been merely a princess in Westerness. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most dramatic beginnings, even those born of brutality and capture, can lead to the most enduring romances, forging a path that might otherwise have been impossible. Horn's quest to reclaim his kingdom, intertwined with his love for Rhimenhild, is all set in motion by that initial shocking act of being stolen from his home. Number 10. Sir Triamour. When you think of a medieval romance, you probably picture a brave knight rescuing a damsel in distress from a dragon or a wicked sorcerer. But what if the distress started with a rival knight fueled by envy and a dark desire simply snatching the lady away? That's exactly the intense beginning for the Middle English romance, Sir Triamour, a tale that throws its hero into a frantic chase and a fierce battle for love. This romance, likely from the 14th century, can be found in collections of medieval narratives, such as the Egerton, Emis's 2862, providing a detailed look into the knightly codes and societal expectations of the time. The story centers on the virtuous and valiant Sir Triamour, a knight renowned throughout the land for his strength, his courage, and his unwavering loyalty. His heart, however, belongs to one person above all others, the beautiful Lady Helen, daughter of the powerful Emperor of Almain. Their love is true and pure, a beacon of light in a world often shadowed by conflict. But where there is pure love and unmatched beauty, there is often bitter jealousy. And in this story, the dark shadow comes in the form of Sir Maroc. Maroc is another knight, powerful in his own right, but consumed by a poisonous envy for Triamour's reputation and a covetous lust for Lady Helen's beauty. He desires Helen for himself, not out of love, but out of a possessive impulse to claim what he believes should be his. He represents the stark contrast to Triamour's honorable devotion. Maroc doesn't bother with polite courtship or even a fair challenge. Instead, he resorts to the most direct and brutal method. He simply abducts Lady Helen. He carries her off against her will, seizing her from her home, or perhaps during an unguarded moment, throwing her into the terrifying reality of being a captive. This act of forced removal, this violent seizure of a noble lady, is the spark that ignites the entire sprawling adventure of Sir Triamour. The kidnapping of Lady Helen isn't just a minor plot point. It is the fundamental disruption that drives the narrative forward. It's the outrage that demands retribution, the injustice that must be set right. For Triamour, Helen's abduction is not merely a personal tragedy. It's a public challenge to his honor and his status as a knight sworn to protect the innocent. He cannot rest. He cannot allow himself a moment's peace until Helen is safe and her captor punished. So, the romance immediately transforms into a relentless pursuit. Triamour, consumed by a desperate urgency, sets out to track down Maroc and rescue his beloved Helen. His quest is fraught with peril. He faces other knights who challenge him, battles fierce opponents, and endures hardships on his journey. Every step of his quest is driven by the image of Helen in captivity, a prisoner of Maroc's dark intentions. The significance of this kidnapping is profound. Tests Triamour's love and commitment in the most extreme ways. It forces him to prove his worth not just as a fighter, but as a devoted lover, willing to risk everything for the woman he cherishes. The act of abduction forces Helen into a situation of vulnerability, highlighting the precarious position of women in a world where might often made right and where their destinies could be violently seized by powerful men. Eventually, Triamour confronts Maroc. Confrontation is, as one might expect in a medieval romance, a brutal and decisive combat. The stakes are everything. Helen's freedom, Triamour's honor, and the very future of their love. The resolution of this initial kidnapping is crucial, but it also opens up new chapters in their lives, as the fallout from such a dramatic event often has long-lasting consequences. The story of Sir Triamour shows how a simple, yet utterly devastating act of kidnapping can kickstart a narrative filled with heroism, devotion, and the timeless struggle between good and evil. It reminds us that, for many medieval romances, the beginning wasn't a gentle courtship, but a violent severing that demanded a hero's unwavering response. Lady Helen's forced removal by Sir Maroc is the very pulse of this captivating tale, turning a simple love story into an epic quest for justice and reunion. Number 9. Amadas et Ydoine. Imagine falling deeply in love, a perfect storybook romance, only to have your beloved suddenly, brutally, and quite literally snatched away by a terrifying giant. This isn't just a nightmare. It's the dramatic, heart-breaking starting point of the old French romance, Amadas et Ydoine. This tale, popular in the late 12th or early 13th century, and found in manuscripts like the one held at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris, under Fonds Français 22359, is a sweeping narrative of devotion, separation, and the desperate lengths a hero will go to for love. The romance introduces us to Amadas, a valiant and handsome knight, and Ydoine, the beautiful and virtuous daughter of the Duke of Burgundy. Their love blossoms pure and intense, filling their days with quiet joy and secret meetings. They are destined for each other, and their connection feels almost fated. However, as is often the case in these stories, their path to happiness is anything but smooth. Their idyllic romance is violently shattered by the intrusion of a monstrous figure, Gondophares, a fearsome giant. Gondophares is not just big. He is portrayed as a creature of immense strength and terrifying appearance, driven by base desires rather than noble affection. He has set his eyes on Ydoine, desiring her not for her spirit or her love, but purely for her beauty and to possess her. He doesn't bother with the niceties of courtship or even a challenge to Amadas. His method is direct, brutal, and completely devastating. One day, Gondophares simply abducts Ydoine. He seizes her, possibly during a moment of vulnerability or ambush, and carries her off to his remote, formidable stronghold. This isn't a subtle persuasion or a gentle enchantment. It is a raw, physical act of capture, a forcible removal of Ydoine from her world and from the man she loves. The act is shocking in its suddenness and its sheer brutality, leaving Amadas in a state of utter despair and fury. Kidnapping of Ydoine by Gondophares instantly transforms Amadas et Ydoine from a sweet love story into a harrowing tale of quest and rescue. For Amadas, this isn't just about reclaiming his beloved. It's about restoring justice and confronting an almost insurmountable evil. The giant represents a direct, terrifying threat to the order and safety of their world, and Ydoine's abduction is the most visceral manifestation of that threat. Amadas, consumed by a grief that turns quickly to a desperate resolve, immediately embarks on a perilous journey to find and rescue Ydoine. His quest takes him through treacherous landscapes, into encounters with other formidable figures, and through trials that test his courage, his endurance, and his sanity. Every step he takes is driven by the image of Ydoine in the giant's clutches, a prisoner in a monstrous lair. The emotional weight of Ydoine's capture is immense. It highlights her vulnerability as a woman in a patriarchal society, where even a princess could be subjected to such a violent act. It also ghosts Amadas's unwavering devotion, compelling him to face seemingly impossible odds. Kidnapping is the defining event that forces Amadas to step into his role as a true hero, pushing him beyond the bounds of ordinary knighthood. The direct result of Ydoine's abduction is a gripping pursuit and a climactic confrontation between Amadas and Gondophares. The battle is depicted as a struggle of good against brute force, and Amadas must summon every ounce of his skill and courage to overcome the monstrous captor. The rescue, when it eventually occurs, is a moment of profound relief and triumph, but the emotional scars of the abduction often linger. Amadas at Ydoine demonstrates how the sheer terror and injustice of a kidnapping can serve as the ultimate inciting incident for a medieval romance. It's a powerful narrative choice that immediately creates high stakes, fuels the hero's motivations, and propels the story into a grand, epic adventure focused on reclaiming a lost love. The abduction of Ydoine by the giant Gondolfleas is the engine that drives this captivating centuries-old tale of love and heroism. Number 8. Chaucer's Man of Law's Tale, Constance. When we think of medieval romances, we often imagine valiant knights and beautiful ladies, but sometimes the most compelling heroines are those who endure unspeakable hardship with unwavering grace. Such is the case with Constance, the central figure in Geoffrey Chaucer's Man of Law's Tale, a narrative woven into the tapestry of the famous Canterbury Tales, penned in the late 14th century and preserved in countless manuscripts. Her story isn't just one kidnapping, but a series of forced removals that drive her incredible yet tragic journey. Constance is a Roman princess, renowned for her beauty, her virtue, and her deep Christian faith. Her tale begins with a diplomatic marriage, a common occurrence in medieval times, but one that swiftly turns into a nightmare. She is betrothed to the Sultan of Syria as part of a pact to convert him and his people to Christianity. This journey, while ostensibly a joyous marriage, is her first forced removal from her home and family. She sets sail for a foreign land, leaving behind everything she knows for the sake of faith and diplomacy. However, the Sultan's mother, a fiercely devout Muslim, is enraged by this alliance, and the prospect of her son abandoning his ancestral faith, she orchestrates a horrifying massacre. During the wedding feast, she and her followers brutally slaughter the Sultan and all his newly converted nobles, effectively wiping out the Christian presence. Constance, as the symbol of this unwanted conversion, is spared from death, but subjected to a fate almost as cruel. The Sultaness places Constance alone on a rudderless boat, without food or provisions, and sets her adrift on the vast, unforgiving sea. This is not a gentle departure. It is an act of utter barbarity, a deliberate abandonment designed to ensure her slow, agonizing death. It is, in essence, a profound kidnapping, a complete and violent severance from her world, her protectors, and her future. Constance is literally stolen by the waves, a prisoner of fate left to the whims of the ocean for years. Through divine intervention, as the tale suggests, Constance survives. After an incredible journey, her boat washes ashore in Northumberland, England. There she is found by a local constable and his wife, who take her in. Her beauty and piety captivate King Alla of Northumberland, who eventually marries her. For a brief time, it seems, Constance has finally found peace and happiness, even bearing a son, Maurice. But Constance's trials are far from over. King Alla's mother, a wicked and jealous queen named Donegild, despises Constance. When Alla is away fighting, Donegild intercepts letters, twists messages, and fabricates lies, ultimately forging an order from the king to set Constance adrift on the sea once more with her infant son. This is her second, equally devastating forced removal, her second kidnapping by the hand of a vengeful woman. Again, Constance is cast out onto the open waters, enduring immense hardship, sorrow, and danger. She is abducted by pirates at one point, but again escapes through divine grace. Her journey is a testament to her faith and resilience as she navigates years of isolation and uncertainty. While Constance does not embark on a quest to find a kidnapped lover, her story is a romance of enduring love and faith in the face of relentless, violent abductions. Her romances with the Sultan, though brief and ill-fated, and then with King Alla, are defined by these traumatic separations. The forced removals are the narrative engines that propel her from one land to another, from one trial to the next. Her eventual reunion with King Allah, long after their separation, is a tender and hard-won triumph, a testament to a love that survives across oceans and through incredible adversity. Chaucer's Man of Law's tale uses these repeated violent abductions not merely as plot devices, but as profound tests of Constance's character and faith. Her story is a stark reminder that in medieval narratives, the beginning of a romance could be fraught with unimaginable peril, shouting heroines whose strength lay not in wielding a sword, but in enduring the merciless currents of a world that repeatedly stole them from safety and happiness. Constance's repeated kidnappings are the heart of her compelling, unforgettable journey. Number 7. Partenope of Blois. Have you ever woken up in a completely unfamiliar place, somewhere grand and magical, with no idea how you got there? For Partenope, the hero of the old French romance, Partenope of Blois, the disorienting experience is precisely how his romantic adventure begins. This tale, popular in the mid-12th century and later translated into Middle English, with copies found in manuscripts like the British Library's Egerton Ensis 2862, starts with a magical, non-violent yet undeniable abduction that pulls its hero into a secret ethereal love affair. Partenope is a young, handsome, and promising prince of Blois. He is depicted as a skilled hunter, enjoying the pursuits of a noble youth. One day, while out hunting a magnificent boar, he pursues his quarry deep into a dense, enchanted forest. Exhausted by the chase, he loses his way and eventually falls asleep under a tree, far from his companions and any familiar path. What happens next isn't a dream. It's a sudden, inexplicable shift into an entirely different reality. When Partenope awakens, he finds himself in an utterly breathtaking, opulent castle. This isn't just a fancy hunting lodge. It's a vast, magnificent stronghold, seemingly constructed by magic, filled with unimaginable riches and luxurious comforts. The castle is lit by unseen sources, and its halls resonate with soft music, yet there are no servants, no guards, no visible inhabitants. It's completely deserted, except for him. He wanders through its wondrous chambers, bewildered and amazed, wondering if he has stepped into a dream. He soon discovers that he is not alone in the castle, though he cannot see her. The castle belongs to a mysterious, powerful, and incredibly beautiful fairy queen named Melior. Melior is a sorceress, and she has magically transported Partenope to her realm because she desires him as her lover. This is her kidnapping method, a magical, instantaneous teleportation, a removal from his world into hers, without his consent or even his conscious awareness. Melior reveals herself to him, not in person but through her voice and through the provision of every comfort he could desire. She offers him her love, her wealth, and her magical realm, but with one crucial condition: he must never attempt to see her face during the day. Their love affair must remain in the dark, a secret between them. If he breaks this rule, she will be lost to him forever. This magical abduction sets the entire romance in motion. Partenope is now a captive of love, albeit a luxurious and seemingly willing one. He is removed from his responsibilities as a prince, from his family, and from the mundane world, all to become the hidden lover of a magical queen. The romance is built on this mysterious foundation, on the tension between their passionate love and the strict unseen boundary Melior has imposed. The story unfolds as Partenope grapples with this unusual arrangement. He falls deeply in love with Melior, reveling in their nocturnal encounters and the wonders of her castle. But the enforced secrecy, the inability to see her face, gnaws at him. His family and friends back home are of course worried by his disappearance, leading to some attempts to find him, or later to question his prolonged absence. This separation from his known world, caused by Melior's magical seizure, is the constant backdrop to his new life. kidnapping, while not violent, is a definite removal of agency for Parthenope. He doesn't choose to go to Melior's castle. He is taken. His choice then becomes whether to accept his new, strange reality and Melior's conditions. His eventual decision to try and see her, spurred by a visit from his mother and sister who convince him to break the taboo, leads to the dramatic climax and their separation. The rest of the romance details his long, arduous quest to win her back and prove his worth. Parthenope of Blois offers a fascinating twist on the kidnapping trope, showing that even a seemingly benevolent or magical abduction can serve as the powerful catalyst for an epic romance. Parthenope's sudden magical transportation into Melior's enchanted world is the very beginning of their unique and challenging love story, proving that sometimes destiny can quite literally sweep you off your feet, whether you're ready or not. Number 6. Apollonius of Tyre. Imagine your life turning into a series of epic misfortunes where joy is fleeting and tragedy lurks around every corner. For Apollonius of Tyre, a figure whose story was incredibly popular throughout the Middle Ages, appearing in various versions including Gower's Confessio Amantis, his entire existence is a roller coaster of fate. While his own romantic life has its share of drama, it's the kidnapping of his beloved daughter Thaisa that truly fuels a significant portion of this sprawling narrative and shapes the love and reunion themes. The story of Apollonius of Tyre is ancient, originating in Greek literature, but it found new life and immense popularity in medieval Europe, translated into Latin, Old English, and Middle English. It follows Apollonius, a virtuous and wise prince, who, through a series of dramatic events, including fleeing a tyrannical king and enduring shipwrecks and separations, eventually finds happiness with his wife, the Princess of Pentapolis. They have a daughter, Thaisa, sometimes called Tharsha. However, peace is never long-lasting for Apollonius. While traveling by sea with his wife and young daughter, a terrible storm hits their ship. His wife appears to die during childbirth, and, following a custom of the sea, her body is committed to the waves in a coffin. This event, while not a kidnapping, is a profound separation that sets up later themes of loss and reunion. Apollonius, heartbroken, fears for his infant daughter's safety and decides to entrust her to a trusted guardian in Tarsus, a city where he once provided aid. Fate, or rather, the cruel machinations of other people, intervenes. When Thaisa grows into a beautiful and accomplished young woman, her supposed guardians, who are supposed to protect her, become greedy and malicious. They don't want to kill her outright, but they scheme to get rid of her for their own gain. They arrange for her to be abducted by pirates. This is where the direct kidnapping comes in. Thaisa is seized by these pirates, taken against her will from the safety of her supposed home, and carried off across the sea. This is a terrifying and brutal act, designed to remove her from her inheritance and force her into a life of servitude. The pirates then transport her to Ydoine, where they sell her to a brothel keeper. Thaisa's abduction is a horrific event that throws her young life into complete disarray. Stripped of her freedom and her identity, she is forced to endure immense hardship and vulnerability. However, Thaisa is not a passive victim. She retains her virtue and intelligence, using her musical and intellectual talents to preserve her honor and eventually escape her grim circumstances. Her unwavering spirit and talent help her avoid being fully exploited. Meanwhile, Apollonius, still mourning the loss of his wife and believing his daughter to be safe, continues his wanderings. The story, therefore, is driven by multiple separations and quests for reunion. While Apollonius doesn't actively seek Thaisa after her kidnapping, since he doesn't know about it, her abduction is a pivotal moment that ensures their paths remain separate for a long time, leading to a truly dramatic reunion later in the narrative. The tale reaches its emotional peak when Apollonius, weary and broken by years of suffering, arrives in Mytilene. He is a shadow of his former self, having sworn an oath of silence. It is through a series of miraculous coincidences and her own ingenuity that Thaisa, now a respected teacher, is brought before him. Her singing and her recounting of her life story, including her abduction and subsequent trials, gradually reveal her identity to her long-lost father. The reunion of Apollonius and Thaisa is one of the most poignant moments in medieval literature, a powerful testament to the enduring bonds of family love that transcend years of separation and unimaginable hardship. It's a moment that only becomes possible because of the initial violent act of her kidnapping, which set her on her own solitary journey of survival. The story then continues with the miraculous discovery that Apollonius's wife was not dead at all, leading to another joyous family reunion. The romance of Apollonius of Tyre uses the kidnapping of Thaisa as a crucial pivot, forcing its characters through immense suffering, but ultimately bringing them to a powerful, tearful reunion. It's a sweeping saga, demonstrating how one cruel act of abduction can set in motion a lifetime of trials, ultimately leading to a profound and deeply satisfying resolution of love rediscovered. Number 5. Bevis of Hampton. When we talk about medieval romances, we often conjure images of noble birth and heroic quests, but sometimes the hero's journey starts in the darkest corners of betrayal and forced enslavement. For Bevis, the titular hero of the powerful Anglo-Norman and Middle English romance Bevis of Hampton, his epic adventure doesn't begin with a quest or a grand tournament, but with a shocking act of child abduction and treachery from within his own family. The romance of Bevis of Hampton, originating in Anglo-Norman French in the 13th century, and later becoming wildly popular in Middle English, with surviving copies in manuscripts like the British Library's Egerton Ennis's 2862 Exile, Love, and Redemption. It introduces Bevis as the young son of Guy, Earl of Hampton, and his beautiful but tragically wicked wife. The story wastes no time in plunging into darkness. Bevis's mother, consumed by a passionate, illicit love for the German emperor, has no patience for her noble husband. In a horrifying act of treachery, she conspires with her German lover to murder Earl Guy. She lures her husband into a trap, where he is ambushed and brutally killed by the German emperor and his men. This scene is shocking, setting a tone of deep betrayal right from the start. But the wickedness doesn't stop there. Young Bevis, just 7 years old, witnesses his father's murder. He is a brave and spirited child, and in a moment of desperate defiance, he tries to avenge his father, even attempting to strike the German emperor with a sword. Such an act of courage from a child, however, only infuriates his mother and her new lover. They realize that this boy, the rightful heir, is a dangerous witness and a future threat to their ill-gotten power. So, Bevis's wicked mother decides to eliminate him, but not by killing him. Instead, she chooses a fate that she believes will ensure he never returns to challenge her. She sells him. She sells her own son to a group of pagan merchants, condemning him to a life of slavery in a foreign land. This is the explicit act of kidnapping and child trafficking that begins Bevis's long and arduous journey. He is forcibly taken from his home, his birthright, and his identity, shipped off to the far-off kingdom of Erminy, a pagan land under the rule of King Ermin. This act of being sold and transported against his will is the defining moment that shapes Bevis's entire life. It transforms him from a noble child with a clear destiny into an enslaved orphan in a foreign land. The subsequent narrative follows Bevis as he navigates his new harsh reality. He endures servitude, but his inherent nobility, strength, and courage soon manifest. He becomes a brave warrior, serving King Ermin and eventually falling in love with the king's daughter, Josiane. His relationship with Josiane is the central romance of the tale. Their love blossoms amidst the backdrop of his slavery and his heroic deeds for King Ermin. Josiane, herself a strong and intelligent woman, is deeply devoted to Bevis, and their shared trials forge an unbreakable bond between them. However, their path to happiness is constantly obstructed by jealous rivals, the dangers of court politics, and the ever-present threat of his past coming to light. The initial kidnapping, Bevis's forced removal from his homeland and his subsequent enslavement, is the catalyst for every adventure, every struggle, and every triumph he experiences. It is what forces him to grow, to prove his worth in a hostile environment, and to ultimately become the hero capable of reclaiming his inheritance and securing his true love. Without this brutal beginning, there would be no tale of the exiled prince who fights his way back to justice and love. The romance of Bevis of Hampton is a stark reminder that in medieval storytelling, the start of a heroic and romantic journey could be incredibly dark and violent, fueled by personal betrayal and the forced capture of an innocent. Bevis's brutal sale and abduction as a child are the raw, intense origins of a narrative that celebrates unwavering courage, enduring love, and the ultimate triumph over unimaginable adversity. Number 4. Sir Eglamour of Artois. Imagine being a noble knight deeply in love with a beautiful princess, only for a monstrous giant to suddenly crash into your world and snatch her away. That's the heart-stopping, devastating beginning of the Middle English romance, Sir Eglamour of Artois. This tale, popular in the 14th century and found in manuscripts like the Cotton Caligula I, throws its hero into an immediate and desperate quest, all sparked by the brutal abduction of his beloved Bess. The story introduces us to Sir Eglamour, a valiant and chivalrous knight, and Christabel, the radiant daughter of the King of Artois. Eglamour and Christabel are deeply in love, their affection pure and strong. However, their path to marriage is complicated by the king's demands. Eglamour must prove his worth through a series of daunting feats before he can wed his daughter. These feats often involve battling formidable opponents and venturing into dangerous lands, a common trope for proving a knight's merit in medieval romances. But before Eglamour can even complete all of the king's trials, a catastrophic event strikes. Terrifying, monstrous giant, known as Sir Maroc, appears on the scene. This giant is not just a large human. He is depicted as a hulking, terrifying creature, embodying pure brute force and malice. He is drawn to Christabel's beauty, not with any sense of love or respect, but with a primal, possessive desire. In a horrifying act of violence and audacity, Sir Maroc attacks and abducts Christabel. He physically seizes her, carries her off against her will, and spirits her away to his formidable lair. This is a classic, straightforward, and deeply traumatic kidnapping. Christabel is powerless against the giant's overwhelming strength, and she is forcibly removed from her home, her family, and the man she loves. The abduction of Christabel instantly ignites the central conflict of Sir Eglamour of Artois. For Eglamour, this act is not just a personal tragedy. It is a profound violation that demands immediate and heroic action. His love for Christabel, combined with his knightly duty to protect the innocent and right wrongs, compels him to abandon all other tasks and dedicate himself entirely to rescuing her. The romance, therefore, immediately transforms into a relentless pursuit and a dangerous confrontation. Eglamour embarks on a perilous journey, determined to track down the giant and reclaim his beloved. His quest is filled with immense challenges. He must navigate treacherous landscapes, face other formidable adversaries who stand in his way, and ultimately confront the monstrous Maroc. Every step he takes is driven by the urgent need to free Christabel from her terrifying captivity. The narrative uses Christabel's kidnapping to establish immense stakes and to showcase Eglamour's unwavering courage and devotion. It forces him to demonstrate a heroism that transcends mere tournament victories or diplomatic missions. He must overcome an enemy who represents pure, untamed power, risking his life for the woman who has been unjustly stolen. The eventual confrontation between Eglamour and Sir Maroc is a violent and decisive battle where the fate of Christabel hangs in the balance. Eglamour, despite Maroc's superior size and strength, fights with the righteous fury of a man defending his love and his honor. The resolution of this initial abduction is a moment of triumph, but as often happens in these detailed medieval narratives, Christabel's return doesn't mean an immediate, happily ever after. Consequences of such a traumatic event can linger, and other challenges often emerge. Sir Eglamour of Artois powerfully illustrates how a dramatic kidnapping can serve as the ultimate catalyst for a medieval romance. Christabel's forced removal by the giant Sir Maroc is the raw, intense beginning of Eglamour's most important quest, turning a story of courtly love into a thrilling and dangerous adventure of rescue and enduring devotion. It proves that sometimes the true test of the hero's love begins with the brutal act of losing the one he cherishes most. Number 3. Floris and Blanchefleur. Imagine being head over heels in love with your childhood sweetheart, only to have them brutally torn from your life and sold into slavery by your own parents. This isn't just a melodramatic plot twist, it's the heartbreaking and pivotal starting point for the enduring medieval romance, Floris and Blanchefleur. This tale, originally French from the mid-12th century, and later translated into Middle English, found in manuscripts such as the Egerton MS's 2862, is a poignant exploration of love loss and the extraordinary lengths one will go to reunite with a lost beloved. The story centers on Floris, the son of a powerful Saracen king, and Blanchefleur, the daughter of a Christian slave captured by the king. Despite their differing social statuses, Floris a prince, Blanchefleur a slave's daughter, they are raised together and become inseparable childhood friends. Their bond quickly deepens into a profound and innocent love, a love that transcends the boundaries of their respective ranks and faiths. They spend their days learning, playing, and sharing secrets, convinced that their love is destined to last forever. However, their parents, particularly Floris's royal parents, are horrified by this burgeoning romance. The idea of their son, the future king, marrying a slave's daughter is simply unacceptable to them. They see it as a threat to their lineage, their power, and the social order. They try to separate the young lovers, but their affection is too strong. Unable to break their bond through simple means, the king and queen resort to a drastic and cruel measure. While Floris is away at school, they orchestrate the permanent removal of Blanchefleur. They don't just banish her, they sell her into slavery. This is a profound and deliberate act of abduction and trafficking. Blanchefleur is seized, torn from her home and from the only life she has ever known, and sold to distant merchants. She is carried off to a far-off land, a prisoner, her fate uncertain, all because her love for Floris was deemed inappropriate by the powerful. When Floris returns from school, eager to reunite with Blanchefleur, he discovers her gone. The shock and grief are immense. He is told she is dead, but he soon learns the truth. She has been sold and taken away. This revelation ignites a fierce, desperate determination within him. His entire world shatters, and he vows to find her, no matter the cost, no matter the distance. Kidnapping of Blanchefleur is the absolute catalyst for Floris's heroic quest. It transforms him from a carefree prince into a determined, heartbroken lover. His journey is long and perilous, taking him across vast stretches of land and sea. He faces numerous challenges, disguises himself, encounters various characters both helpful and treacherous, and spends a fortune in his relentless pursuit. Every step of his adventure, every hardship he endures, is fueled by the hope of finding Blanchefleur and the memory of their stolen childhood love. The narrative beautifully illustrates the power of enduring love in the face of immense adversity. Blanchefleur, though a victim of abduction, also demonstrates resilience in her own difficult circumstances, maintaining her virtue and hope while waiting for Floris. Her forced removal highlights the vulnerability of individuals, especially women and those of lower status, to the whims and cruelties of those in power during the medieval period. The story culminates in Floris's elaborate plan to infiltrate the Tower of Maidens in Babylon, where Blanchefleur is eventually housed among other beautiful young women being sold for the emir's harem. The reunion, when it finally occurs, is a moment of intense emotional power, a testament to their unwavering love and the extraordinary lengths they went to for each other. Floris and Blanchefleur uses the brutal act of Blanchefleur's forced sale and abduction as the very foundation of its narrative. It's a compelling example of how a shocking act of removal, driven by social anxieties and parental disapproval, can spark an epic romantic quest that celebrates devotion, perseverance, and the timeless triumph of true love over all obstacles. The story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound romantic journeys begin with a cruel, unasked-for separation. Number 2. Sir Orfeo. Imagine a powerful king happily ruling his land, deeply in love with his queen, only to have her suddenly, magically, and without explanation, vanish into thin air. That's the chilling and utterly captivating beginning of Sir Orfeo, a Middle English romance from around the 14th century, a Breton play found in the celebrated Auchinleck manuscript. This tale is a poignant and fantastical journey, driven entirely by the sudden, bewildering abduction of a beloved queen by the mysterious King of Fairies. The story introduces King Orfeo, a magnificent ruler of Winchester, a man of immense power, wisdom, and notably, a master of the harp. His kingdom is peaceful, and his life is filled with joy, largely due to his profound love for his beautiful and virtuous wife, Queen Eurydice. Their love is the bedrock of his happiness, and their union symbolizes harmony and prosperity in his realm. One spring morning, Queen Eurydice goes with her 2 maidens to relax and sleep under a beautiful grafted tree in her orchard. While she sleeps, she experiences a terrifying dream, or perhaps a vision. When she awakens, she is distraught, screaming and tearing at her clothes, seemingly driven mad by what she has seen. Her maidens struggle to hold her, and she is eventually brought back to the castle, where Orfeo finds her in a state of utter distress. Eurydice recounts her terrifying encounter. She was visited by the King of Fairies and his immense retinue. They rode on magnificent horses, surrounded by a magical hunt, and he informed her that she must come with him to his fairy kingdom. He told her she would be taken whether she liked it or not, and that if she resisted, she would be torn limb from limb. This is the direct, explicit, and utterly non-negotiable kidnapping announcement. Despite Orfeo's desperate attempts to guard her and keep her safe within his castle, the King of Fairies' promise proves true. The very next day, as if by magic, Eurydice simply vanishes. She is gone. She is not kidnapped in the physical sense of being dragged away by force, but rather spirited away by an unseen supernatural power. This magical abduction is absolute and undeniable. She is taken from her husband, her home, and her human existence into the unseen realm of fairyland. The disappearance of Queen Eurydice is the central, devastating event that throws Orfeo's world into chaos and sets the entire romance in motion. His joy turns to profound sorrow. He cannot bear to live without her. Overcome with grief, he decides to abandon his kingdom. Giving up his crown and his royal life, he dresses in rags, takes only his beloved harp, and retreats into the wilderness to live as a hermit, enduring immense hardship, playing his harp only for the animals and mourning his lost queen. For 10 long years, Orfeo wanders his music, becoming increasingly sorrowful. One day, while in the wilderness, he catches glimpses of the fairy host riding by. Among them, he sees his long-lost Eurydice. This sighting, a profound moment of hope and recognition, renews his resolve. He follows the fairy host, eventually discovering a hidden path into the enchanted, shimmering, and strangely beautiful fairy kingdom, ruled by the very king who abducted his wife. Orfeo, disguised as a poor minstrel, bravely enters the fairy kingdom. He uses his exceptional harp playing to gain entry and, eventually, to charm the fairy king. He discovers Eurydice among many other stolen mortals, seemingly in a state of dreamlike trance, not interacting but merely existing in this other world. His musical performance, a direct result of the King of Fairies' challenge, eventually moves the fairy monarch to grant him one wish. Orfeo, without hesitation, asks for Queen Eurydice. The fairy king, bound by his word, is forced to release her. The reunion of Orfeo and Eurydice, after 10 years of separation caused by her magical abduction, is deeply emotional. The journey back to their kingdom and their eventual joyful return to their people completes the arc of this poignant romance. Sir Orfeo is a perfect example of how a mysterious and magical kidnapping can be the ultimate catalyst for an epic journey of love loss and the power of devotion. Eurydice's sudden, otherworldly seizure is the narrative's very heartbeat, propelling Orfeo into a heroic quest that explores themes of suffering, perseverance, and the enduring strength of a love that defies even the boundaries between worlds. Number 1. Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart. Chrétien de Troyes. When you think of the legendary romance between Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere, you might picture clandestine meetings or secret glances. But what if their most defining and scandalous adventure began with the Queen being brutally snatched away, prompting a knight to risk his entire reputation for her? This is precisely the electrifying start of Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart, penned by the master of Arthurian romance, Chrétien de Troyes, in the late 12th century. This influential old French work, a cornerstone of later Arthurian literature and found in countless copies across Europe, establishes Lancelot's iconic devotion through a desperate, honor-defying rescue mission. The story begins not with a gentle courtly gathering, but with a dramatic and violent disruption of Camelot's peace. King Arthur and his court are celebrating when suddenly a treacherous knight named Meleagant, son of King Badamagu, bursts onto the scene. Meleagant is portrayed as arrogant and powerful, a challenger to Arthur's authority, and he lays claim to all the inhabitants of Camelot who are from his land, the kingdom of Gore. When this demand is denied, he issues a challenge. He will fight any knight who dares to rescue those he intends to take, and if he wins, he will take Queen Guinevere herself as his prize. Sir Kay, Arthur's seneschal, rashly accepts Meleagant's challenge despite warnings. Of course, Kay is defeated, and Meleagant seizes Guinevere, forcibly abducting her from Arthur's court. This is a direct, undeniable act of kidnapping, a public humiliation for Arthur, and a horrifying ordeal for the Queen. She is carried off against her will to Meleagant's heavily guarded fortress in Gore, a land from which, it is said, no one ever returns. This abduction of Queen Guinevere is the absolute starting point of Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart. It is the ultimate catalyst for Lancelot's journey, setting the stage for one of the most iconic and complex romantic narratives in Western literature. Lancelot is not present when Guinevere is taken, but he soon learns of her capture. His reaction is immediate and overwhelming. He is consumed by a single fervent desire to rescue his queen. His quest begins with an infamous and reputation-shattering decision. While pursuing Meleagant, Lancelot encounters a dwarf driving a cart, a vehicle traditionally used to transport criminals to their execution. He is told that if he wishes to learn which way Meleagant took the queen, he must ride in the cart. Riding in such a vehicle would bring immense shame and dishonor to any knight, essentially stripping him of his knightly status in the eyes of society. For a moment, Lancelot hesitates. The act of entering the cart would mean social disgrace, a blot on his perfect knightly record. But his devotion to Guinevere is so absolute, so overpowering, that he casts aside all concern for his honor. He climbs into the cart. This one moment of hesitation, and his ultimate decision to choose love over reputation, becomes a crucial point in the romance, highlighting the depth of his secret affection for the queen. His journey to rescue Guinevere is filled with extraordinary trials. He crosses the perilous sword bridge, a feat almost nobody could achieve, battles fierce knights, and endures immense suffering, all driven by his singular focus on the queen's safety. Lancelot's devotion is so profound that it borders on obsessive, showing a love that transcends courtly convention. When he finally reaches Meleagant's castle and rescues Guinevere, their reunion is charged with complex emotions. Guinevere, initially angered by Lancelot's moment of hesitation before entering the cart, eventually acknowledges his boundless devotion. Their escape and subsequent encounters delve into the nuances of their passionate yet illicit love, which shaped the future of Arthur's court and the entire Round Table legend. Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart, uses the dramatic and violent kidnapping of Queen Guinevere by Meleagant as its ultimate narrative engine. It's the shocking beginning that not only propels Lancelot into his defining heroic quest, but also establishes the profound, all-consuming nature of his love for the queen. It illustrates how even in the highest echelons of medieval chivalry, a sudden act of abduction could unleash passions and challenges that forever altered the course of legendary romance.